Welcome to the Super Sports Bros Podcast, sponsored by Undisputed Nutrition and Bliss Body. I'm your host, John Buddha Phillips, professional wrestler, former Division III collegiate men's basketball player, and former high school boys basketball coach. I know sports, bro, and my goal was to start a unique podcast that broke away from traditional norms by exclusively featuring the views and opinions from guests with an athletic background. On the show, I'll be discussing various topics in the NBA, NFL, MLB, WWE, and UFC. Find us online through our social media accounts. Give us a like on our Super Sports Bros Podcast Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SSB Podcast 64 and check us out on YouTube, the Super Sports Bros Podcast. For bros, by bros.
What kind of amateur show are you running here?
Come one, come all. Step right up. We are here live at the Super Sports Bros Podcast, and it is your host here, John Buddha Phillips. And I have a virtual guest with me here tonight, Patrick Sullivan. Pat, say hello to the fans out there.
Hey, it's great to be on the show, John. Thank you so much for having me. There's a brutal snowstorm outside. This is kind of like the podcast version of that one Monday Night Raw they did at WWE headquarters.
I remember that. Tonight on the show, we're going to be discussing wrestling, and we're going to be talking about the WWE, Raw, SmackDown, and we both watched the 2021 Royal Rumble. So we're going to break that down. We're going to give our opinions, our thoughts. And I couldn't have a better guest to do that with. Pat Sullivan is currently training to become a professional wrestler. Pat and I have very similar paths in wrestling. We both started at the same school, and we transitioned over to another school. And, you know, in my opinion, it won't be long before you see Patty O'Galvin in a wrestling ring near you.
That would be quite a sight to behold, I'm sure.
When Pat's not training to be a wrestler, he is a Boston police officer, keeping the streets safe.
Yes. I'm a real crime fighter.
So Pat, real quick before we jump into this other guy you train with, Johnny Pierce. What a bozo, huh?
Yeah, he's something else. You know, he'll get there. He's got all the tools. He just needs to learn how to use them.
Yeah. I mean, him and Patty O'Galvin, you know. I think there was a promo cut where he was slamming him into a garage door, you know. It's some bad blood.
You know, Johnny Pierce just needs to stay out of trouble. Patty O'Galvin's all about cleaning up the streets, and, you know, if he feels like Johnny Pierce is out there acting like a dirtbag, he's got a job to do, and he's going to do his job.
Tag him and bag him.
Cuff him and stuff him. Yeah, man, but we have been in the ring together. We have been to quite a few training sessions, and I can attest to the fact that you lay in your shit. And you always make it look good, so it's always a pleasure.
Right back at you, my man. Perfect guest to have on the show when discussing wrestling. You know, we're both fans. We've both stepped foot in a wrestling ring. The WWE had an event on January 31st, the 2021 Royal Rumble. Before we jump into, you know, our little match breakdown here, what was your thought, Pat, of the show overall?
So, I'll start by saying this is something that I think a lot of people who grew up watching WWF, now WWE, can relate to. Royal Rumble is always my favorite pay-per-view of the year. Some of my favorite pay-per-views, like in wrestling history, have been Royal Rumbles. Like, if I were to make a list of my top 10 favorite all-time WWE pay-per-views, 5 of them would be Royal Rumbles. There's been bad Rumble matches, or there's been Rumble matches that haven't been that great, but I think about the Royal Rumble as pizza. Even if it's bad, it's still good. Or a Star Wars movie or something like that. The new Star Wars movies came out, they weren't the best movies, but hey, it was a Star Wars movie, and I'm a Star Wars fan, so I enjoyed myself watching it. And likewise, there's been Royal Rumble matches that really haven't been the best booked, or maybe the wrong person won, or it didn't go as well as it could have gone. But I always have fun watching the Royal Rumble. It's my favorite WWE event of the year every year. So I thought this was a good show. I was very entertained by it. You know, I think without the live audience, especially like comparing it to last year's Rumble where the live audience was so hot and so into the show, I can't even say how much I miss live crowds in wrestling. I know they're doing the best they can with it. And the Thunderdome setup, you know, in some ways replicates the experience of watching with a live crowd, but that's something you really can't recapture, especially since, like, the Royal Rumble is one of those events that seems to attract people from all over the world, like really hardcore, really vocal wrestling fans that aren't afraid to express their opinion. And oftentimes, to me, that's one of the more fun things about the show. So, you know, not having the fans in attendance, I think, compared to years past, it detracted from the quality of the show overall. It definitely detracted from how this would compare to past events. But I know that that's nobody's fault, and I know that they're kind of doing the best they can with it. And overall, it was a good show. I mean, I enjoyed every minute of it. I think that there were some questionable creative decisions made, I think, here and there, but I always have a good time watching the Royal Rumble. Like I said, even when it's bad, it's good.
I'm with you there. I definitely share your opinion. You hit a lot of good points right there. It's not my favorite show of the year because I definitely like watching WrestleMania. I know that's pretty, you know, that's like the easy answer to give. What's your favorite pay-per-view? WrestleMania. But I want to say it's two. It's like a close second to WrestleMania. As much as SummerSlam is like the second biggest pay-per-view of the year, there's something about the Royal Rumble that just attracts, you know, an audience. It attracts my interest, right? There's so many questions leading up to that Royal Rumble match, and we've been so fortunate to have two Royal Rumble matches, a men's and a women's. And like you said, last year's Royal Rumble in front of a live audience, incredible event. This year's, we had to make do with what we had. Thunderdome, you know, they're pumping in crowd noise. They got the people on the screens, and they're just trying to do the best they can. And with that being said, you know, with all of the circumstances surrounding us right now, it was a damn good pay-per-view. Overall, from top to bottom, I agree.
Yes.
I agree. And I've been very critical of their content during this pandemic.
Right.
Obviously, WrestleMania last year had its good moments, but overall, I didn't think it was a good WrestleMania. The pay-per-views leading up to this year's Royal Rumble, they weren't that good in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I have pretty high standards for what I expect the WWE to produce.
They have such a depth of talent and their roster and their resources they have at their disposal. I mean, you should have high expectations. They should be able to put together a hell of a wrestling show every week.
Exactly. So yeah, the Raws, the SmackDowns, the NXTs, the pay-per-views, I just didn't think that they were doing enough, or like you said, creatively, something was lacking. So I had low expectations going into this year's Royal Rumble. No live crowd. Like when you think about who's going to be a surprise entrant, Vince McMahon's, you know, motto has been, and always will be, you don't want to, you know, blow your load.
The best possible words you could have used to express that thought. I agree 100%. You don't want to blow your load all in one go.
Why would you waste a moment on, you know, having The Rock? Why would you have him come back during a pandemic with no live audience when you don't need to? If you have The Rock on WrestleMania 37, you can still get there without having him on the Royal Rumble, right?
Right. Agreed.
It's going to be interesting to see in the upcoming pay-per-views leading up to this year's Mania if they keep this momentum going or if they squander it.
Well, one thing that WWE is very good at, and I'm like you, I'm somebody that grew up watching it, and I kind of fell in love with it during the Attitude Era, which, you know, guys from our generation, we look at that as kind of like, we sort of hold that out as like when wrestling was good. That's why a guy like Edge coming back is such a big deal, because a lot of the people watching today grew up watching Edge. Most of the audience is just in that age group now. But even though I do have a tendency to question some of the decisions WWE makes with like their storytelling, they do tend to be very good at making moments. And I think they gave us some cool moments this year, just like they do all the time. So, you know, maybe the follow-through might not be what we'd like it to be, but I think that maybe sometimes they think of their job as being in the business of creating special moments for the audience and not so much special long-term storytelling that you can really sink your teeth into.
Sure. And then you have to keep in mind who their audience is. You know, it's just a lot of young kids, like the PG audience, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Coming up for them is the Elimination Chamber this month, the 21st of February. They have Fastlane in March on the 21st, and WrestleMania is another 2-day event, April 10th to April 11th, so I'm rooting for you, WWE.
Hopefully, you know, they live up to our expectations. It seems like there's some good stuff that's in the works.
Hell yeah. So just please don't screw it up.
Right.
There was the Royal Rumble kickoff show where we saw Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler challenge the women's tag team champions, Charlotte Flair and Asuka. And what I wanted to ask you about, Pat, because like we've seen it on Raw, is obviously, you know, we can harp all night and day on Lacey Evans and the distraction with her father, but I want to dig a little deeper with you, right? I like to think outside the box. So it's become normal for Baszler and Jax to butt heads because there's two big egos. And it's almost like they thrive in that environment. Like, they want to tease us, like, oh, they're going to break up. Or, oh, you know, Nia Jax didn't like when Shayna Baszler tagged herself in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Putting them at odds against each other. But, you know, they just have this knack of winning, regardless of what's going on with their relationship as a tag team. Okay? But what I did notice is that Asuka and Flair are two of the best, and they're upper echelon, top notch. There's just no congruity. There's no chemistry. Like, I think I saw a spot where, like, either Asuka, correct me if I'm wrong, one of them was getting beaten up by Baszler and Jax, and the other one didn't come out to run out and save them. They just hung out in the back. It probably was Charlotte getting beat up by Jax and Baszler, and I'm like thinking to myself, if you're a tag team champion with Asuka, wouldn't she like come help you in that moment? And they never did.
Yeah, very questionable creative decision. I missed that moment. I was not as invested in this match, and it's not the fault of Charlotte or Asuka, both of whom I think are awesome. The team of Nia Jax and Shayna, I don't have any investment in it. It does seem to be thrown together. I loved Shayna's run in NXT where she was a killer.
Oh, yeah.
I thought she had some amazing matches. Even Nia Jax has had some great performances over the years. But the kind of like, you know, WWE has every so often they'll kind of like throw together these two people that don't have anything else going on, and it feels like a very thrown together team. Like the characters that they portray on TV, like it doesn't make sense that those two people would hang out with each other to me. And I don't know, I went into this match with very little investment in it. I really wasn't too interested. To me, the most intriguing part of the whole thing is the storyline with Lacey Evans, which I actually think is cool. I actually am into that. I do have an interest in seeing where it goes. I would like to see Lacey Evans get elevated by feuding with Charlotte. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that's going. I like the Ric Flair involvement. But you know, the story leading up to this match by itself, to me, it was kind of like just a sideshow to the real focus, which is the Lacey Evans feud, which maybe they might be building for WrestleMania, I imagine.
Okay. I definitely predicted that the titles would change hands, and sure enough they did. Lacey Evans distracted Charlotte, hitting her with some brass knuckles. Jax was able to hit her finish with the leg drop on Charlotte. These were my notes for the match. I'm thinking to myself, why is this on the kickoff show? Number one.
That was a little weird too.
Because you can have a match on the kickoff show, but it shouldn't be for the Women's Tag Team Championship. To me, it felt like it was devaluing.
Wait until we talk about the match that came on after, opening the show.
Yeah, what about it? Oh, because it opened?
Yeah, so Drew and Goldberg opened the show for the championship, and I mean, it's like...
You would have rather seen that later on in the night?
Yeah. The idea of like, okay, you're taking this big title, like the women's championship should be, you know, prominently featured, and I think that it does devalue the division a little bit to just have it thrown on the kickoff show. I was very surprised by that.
Okay. I don't know, like, you can have your kickoff matches all you want, but as soon as I see a championship being defended on a kickoff show, I'm like, well, that sucks for those champions. That sucks for the state of that championship.
Right.
So we saw Jax pin Flair. I wrote that down. I'm thinking to myself, damn, like, here we have Charlotte Flair, who's, you know, one of the best, if not the best, women's wrestlers that, you know, you and I have seen in quite some time. And she's losing a tag team championship match on a kickoff show to Nia Jax. Not good, right?
Nia Jax is, like I said, she's had good matches, but she's nowhere close to my favorite wrestler. I think there's dozens of women that they have under contract right now that can do a better job at Nia Jax's job than she does.
Absolutely. One last note, because I know we talked about the build-up of the Flair-Evans potential WrestleMania match or whatever they got going on, whatever they got up their sleeves. I like it too. I'm in agreement with you on that. But this is what I didn't like. They had Alexa Bliss pin Asuka on a non-title match, and I'm thinking to myself, right, like a few things throughout the night as we're watching the show, but in this women's tag match, with the division that we've seen with Asuka and Charlotte, where they're not buddy-buddy, right? They're paper champions. I hate saying that, but it's true. They're placeholders.
If I could cut you off, to me it feels like, you know, in WWE, it's like every tag team has to break up and feud. You know what I mean? not every tag team, but like 90% of WWE tag teams have broken up and had a feud with each other.
Yeah.
Like, it happens way more often than not. So to me, that kind of feels like just a place setting for an eventual feud between Asuka and Charlotte. And there's conversations about Asuka eventually finishing her career fairly soon, within the next few years. So maybe that'll be kind of
the send-off,
her last run.
Yeah.
But that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. So with Flair having Lacey Evans distractions, I was thinking, like, why wouldn't you just hit Alexa Bliss's Fiend music to distract, like, Asuka, so you have both of those storylines, like, going? They pretty much just scrapped. It's like they had Alexa beat Asuka and then just, like, nothing has happened since then. So, I don't know, I think they fell short there creatively, like, even just hitting the music and Asuka, like, reacting to it, like, where is she, would have been enough for me. You don't have to send Alexa Bliss running out through the curtains. You don't have to cut the lights out and have her pop up in the ring. I just think something would have been better than nothing for me in that moment. But that's just me being picky, you know?
Well, interesting you mentioned that, not to skip ahead, but it was something that generated a lot of controversy. A lot of people hated it, but you're right. Alexa Bliss did beat Asuka, and, you know, a lot of people felt like Asuka had kind of been buried, and maybe that would have been cool if that had, like, elevated Alexa Bliss a little bit, but later on in the Women's Rumble, you know, we can talk about how she got eliminated.
Yep.
And it seems like both of those two wrestlers ended up kind of looking a little bit worse.
We will talk about that. I mean, the Kickoff, they're doing weird stuff with the 24/7 championship, which we're going to talk about later, but, you know, I don't blame you for not watching the Kickoff. It's hard to watch, you know? So yeah, we open up the show, and it's Goldberg versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship. Before I give my take, I know you're kind of foaming at the mouth to give your take on it, so why don't you go ahead?
I was surprised. I think looking at the overall show, you know, from like a bird's eye view perspective, kind of zooming out a little bit, maybe it's not the worst idea for that particular match to open the show, but Drew being WWE champion. I don't know, when I was a kid, there was one champion, and he was just the champion. They didn't have a whole bunch of different ones, so he's some kind of champion, and the match, therefore, to me, should have had a higher profile. But it was good. It accomplished what it wanted to accomplish. I was extremely entertained by it. I was very invested in it. I think they made the right decision in terms of Drew putting Goldberg away. It felt like a send-off for Goldberg. It felt like a respectful send-off for Goldberg. It elevated Drew McIntyre with kind of the show of respect at the end. It didn't go too long. It didn't overstay its welcome. And one thing that WWE has been criticized by a lot of fans for the last couple of years is the idea that, like, they're bringing in kind of these semi-retired, like, part-time guys and sort of prominently featuring them in a way that doesn't reflect well on the younger talent. And I think it would have been the worst thing in the world if Goldberg beat Drew McIntyre, especially how hot Drew McIntyre has been. So I think this idea that they brought in Goldberg, he put Drew McIntyre over with kind of this show of respect, and it kind of felt like a respectful send-off for Goldberg. I thought it was very well done. I don't have anything negative to say about it, other than maybe, you know, questioning why it opened the show. But other than that, I thought it was well done.
So I guess if you were booking, you would have had it later on in the night.
So I have really fallen in love with the way, like, New Japan Pro Wrestling does it, where WWE, they like to do, like, the really unpredictable card where it's like, you know, you don't know what the next thing is going to be, and I guess, I don't know if they think that that makes for a more compelling, interesting show. I personally don't think it does. I kind of like the logic of, and, you know, they do this in Japan, right? The least important match starts the show, the most important match finishes the show. Every match is just more important than the one that came before it. So you know, I think that's just an interesting way of doing it, and I've kind of fallen in love with it. And this trend of, like, opening the show with, like, big title matches, to me, it's kind of, I don't know, the most important matches should go on towards the end of the show.
It's counterproductive, right?
Yeah.
All right. I'm glad you liked that Goldberg-McIntyre match, and this is why, you know, I have this podcast, is for differences in opinions. You know, we can't agree on everything, right?
Sure.
I did not care for this match.
John, I think this would suck to listen to if we just
be yes men and agree with everything?
Yeah, nobody wants to listen to that.
Yeah. So I didn't care for this match. You know, some of the points you brought up, I did agree with you. They didn't overstay their welcome. It got the job done. However, I predicted Goldberg to win, just based on, like, the way he's been booked. When he's been gone, come back, he faces a champion, he takes the title from that champion. So I figured, like, with WrestleMania looming, would you rather have McIntyre walk in as your champion or Goldberg? And because we know that money makes the world go round, Goldberg is the big money guy. You know, but you're right. Fans have definitely caught on to the whole, hey, WWE, why are you bringing back these old part-timers and taking away from your core group of roster guys that have been carrying your show for a whole year? I didn't care for McIntyre spearing Goldberg, you know, when he stole his move. It's one thing if it's Edge. It's one thing if it's Bobby Lashley. People that use the spear. Doing it to Goldberg. But yeah, Drew McIntyre is not known for doing spears, so I didn't care for that. The jackhammer was shits.
Yeah, they botched it. I remember. Yeah, I don't think anything else was really botched. That was a big moment. They did botch it pretty noticeably.
So the jackhammer was not good. It wasn't clean. He didn't hit all of it. It was the shits. And my opinion is this, and maybe you can check me if you think I'm wrong, but hey, Goldberg, if you can't hit a clean jackhammer anymore, don't do it.
So, John, I gotta stop you there because that's all he does. We all have this idea of like what a Goldberg match is. And if you take away a jackhammer, you've taken away 50% of what he does. It's either the spear or the jackhammer. He got to be one of the biggest names in wrestling in the late 90s because he would come in and have 45-second squash matches where those were the only two moves he did. And, you know, it took him a good long while before he really learned how to work. So, yeah, I think Goldberg had said something about, like, he didn't have as much time to prepare or get in shape as he would have liked. So maybe that his kind of lack of preparation, which he didn't seem to be out of shape. He looked great for a guy his age, but he did seem noticeably blown up and tired. And just, you know, I don't mean to be mean or disrespectful when I say this, but he looked old. He just looked like an old man out there. And, you know, you kind of framed this rhetorical question earlier, like, who'd you rather see go to WrestleMania, Drew or Goldberg? And, you know, to kind of answer your rhetorical question, it's like, I don't want to see Goldberg because, you know, I think that this should be his last match. It felt like an appropriate last match. He put over a guy that WWE sees as being their number one top guy right now, or a future number one top guy, at least a top babyface. And I feel like I've been there, done that with Goldberg at this point. Not disrespecting him or anything, or saying that he hasn't, you know, been awesome, but it's maybe time for him to hang it up. And I think that this was a good send-off. It was a respectful send-off, and it felt right.
So, because we both know that anything can happen in World Wrestling Entertainment, it could be Goldberg's send-off. I know you keep bringing that up, and what a way it would be to see him kind of just ride off into the sunset. He's under contract to do another match this year. So that's why I was thinking ahead of the match, like, alright, let's say Goldberg wins at the Rumble, he can defend at Mania, walk in as champ, drop it to someone else, and then he won't have to do any more matches for this year. And then I was like, alright, well, if Goldberg loses at the Rumble, where do you use him for that one more match for the rest of the year, and when do you do it? Like, so, we'll see.
I would say
SummerSlam?
Like, I would say keep him out of the main event. You know what I mean? Like, elevate a mid-card guy. That's about all I think that if you're going to get value out of it, and probably what they're going to do is like one of the Saudi Arabia shows where they like dust off the old guys to come rep. But, you know, if I had my way, my preference would be for Goldberg to basically, if he is going to have another match in 2021, elevate a mid-card guy who's not in the main event scene.
To put him in the main event scene, yeah.
That would be his ticket to the main event.
So we'll see. I mean, he could either... I mean, he's under contract to have another match, so most likely he's going to have one more match in the year of 2021. Moving on, we saw the SmackDown Women's Championship title with Carmella challenging Sasha Banks. Carmella, of course, coming to the ring with...
Reginald. The sommelier.
The sommelier Reginald.
He's a sommelier, he's not Somalian.
No,
he's
those are two very different things. So
two different things.
Pay attention when we say sommelier.
Sommelier.
Alright, he tells her what kind of wine pairs well with the food she's eating. We saw Sasha Banks come out with the belt, and she got the win, defended, and retained over Mella. Now, some of my notes, they kind of teased that Reggie was going to turn on Mella. And, you know, overall it was a good women's title match. As far as the whole pay-per-view goes, it wasn't one of the most memorable matches of the night, obviously, given the men's and the women's rumble and the Reigns and the Owens last man standing match. But, you know, they did pretty well. They teased Reggie turning on Mella and switching sides and, like, helping out Banks. I think I would have liked to see that just because it would have been different than what they did do. And that didn't happen. It's a weird dynamic between Mella as the heel and Sasha as the babyface heel.
She was a very heelish babyface.
Heelish babyface. So that's what I took away from that. And what did you think of that match?
It was a good match. I was into it the whole time. Carmella has improved so much. She's a star. She's extremely charismatic. Sasha, of course, like Probably the best. I mean, I don't know. I think she's definitely a contender for best female wrestler in North America. I think Sasha's great. And Carmella isn't like the ring general that Sasha is. Like Sasha's, like they used to say about Ric Flair, like he could have a good match with a broomstick. Like Sasha's at that level, you know what I mean? She's a ring general. She can have a good match with anybody. If she's in there with a good wrestler, she can have a great match. If she's in there with a bad wrestler, she can have a good match. So Carmella's not there yet, but Carmella has definitely, like with kind of the repackaging after her comeback, I'm digging it. I think she's great. I love Reginald. I love the idea of this guy that like he had kind of this, you know, non-wrestler. He's like a civilian. He's not really a in-ring competitor. But then they put him in the ring with Sasha and he was doing all this crazy athletic stuff. It's like, where'd this guy come from? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think he's just been a blast to watch, and I think that duo has been great. I don't know what their plans are with Reginald. Like, I know he does have pro wrestling background. He's a pro wrestler, but they really haven't brought him in as a pro wrestler. They have brought him in as apparently just a very athletic sommelier. But I don't know what their plans are for that guy longer term. If they just, want to give him like just a short run just for this storyline, or if they really kind of intend to give him an opportunity as a long-term member of the company, which I think they should do because the guy has it. But those two together have been really fun to watch. So I think everything clicked. It was a good match. There was a spot where Carmella was trying to tie up Sasha's hair, getting tied up in the ring rope, and it just looked crap. It got botched pretty bad.
Yeah.
But I thought everybody looked good. I didn't quite get why the referee would eject Reginald for catching Sasha Banks. And that goes back to what you were saying about them kind of teasing that they might, pair up or something against Carmella at some point, which would be interesting. I wouldn't mind that because it would give the storyline some more legs and they could do maybe a rematch at some point.
Did you pick Sasha to retain or Mella to take it?
I mean, I didn't think it was the right time for Carmella to beat Sasha. I expected Sasha to win. I was thinking the only way for Carmella to win, or where it would make sense, was if Reginald pulled some interference or something.
Yeah.
But he was a non-issue in the finish.
Yeah, me too. Okay, I took Sasha too. We got the Women's Royal Rumble match. I'm going to just jump in and say who I picked just because it had no effect on the outcome. They got these photos coming out. Becky Lynch looking like she's back in wrestling shape, so
right.
You think this would be a perfect opportunity for Seth Rollins to come back. We haven't seen him in a while. I'm like, all right, well, if they're going to bring Seth back for the men's, maybe they bring Becky back too for the women's. I chose Becky Lynch as a surprise entrant and to win the Rumble, and you chose...
I chose Bianca Belair. Not only did I choose Bianca Belair as the person I kind of predicted would win, but she was the person I wanted to see win, and I thought it was great. That was like a jump out of my couch moment. I loved it. But yeah, if you notice, and this isn't something that occurred to me until recently, but they had announced in advance that Natalya would be number 30. You know what I mean? So I think they were trying to avoid that Batista thing from a few years ago where everybody thought Daniel Bryan would come in at number 30 and the crowd just shat on the whole thing because he didn't. So I think when you announce in advance that, okay, this person's going to be number 30, you're not going to be, sending hate mail to Vince McMahon because it wasn't Becky Lynch. But I wouldn't have necessarily wanted those two to come back at Royal Rumble. They had been kept separate from each other in storyline for a while, and I'd like to see that continue. I don't think they should be like a couple in storyline on TV. I don't have any interest in really seeing that, especially with the way Seth's character has been portrayed.
Sure. What'd you think of the Rumble?
Like a half hour of nonsense. We sat around for 100 years to wait for the next match. It was so much filler. There was that goofy segment with the 24/7 belt. Yeah, I really lost my interest during that period of time, but I guess they had to get through it. I thought it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of fun stuff, you know what I mean? You had the Alicia Fox segment with the 24/7 belt. The girl from the Iconics.
Billie Kay?
Billie Kay, thank you. All right. So back on track here. Billie Kay was my favorite thing about the whole Royal Rumble. I think she's a national treasure. I could watch her. If they just made Monday Night Raw the Billie Kay show, and it was 3 hours of her just talking shit, I think it'd be the best show on TV. She's one of the few people that they've ever had on their roster that I think does comedy well. The other one would be R-Truth. R-Truth is genuinely funny, but usually when WWE tries to be funny, they put together a segment that's supposed to be funny, it usually isn't. It usually sucks. And she's one of the few exceptions. She's actually funny. She's hilarious. So I thought her shenanigans were awesome. When she walked over to the commentary desk and put on a headset, I popped. That was the biggest pop of the show for me because I was this is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's a lot of fun.
I noticed that in the 30 entrants, they used their whole active main roster. Did you notice that?
Yeah, that's always been a problem with their women's division is it's only there were 6 women on each show. Or, you know what I mean? It just seems like the same group of women kind of fighting each other back and forth, and there's no depth to the rosters. Which, I mean, you see this problem. Like, all right, I was watching the show with my fiance, who's not really a wrestling fan. She puts up with it, but she was watching with me. And she said, oh, they're doing a women's Royal Rumble. And I was like, yes. And she said, do they even have 30 women that work for them? And I was like, yeah. I mean, she doesn't watch the show. She's not really a fan. But right there, she knew, like, that's the problem. You know what I mean? You really don't have 30 women that are going to be good contenders for Royal Rumble to begin with.
Right, absolutely. There were some questionable legends that came back. I had made a list that I'd be happy to go over with you because I think it's kind of funny. But some of them I thought were questionable. Like, why would you bring this person back for this Royal Rumble? That's just my take. I was like, the music would hit, the legend would come out, and I would just be like, what? Instead of like, oh my God, it's so-and-so. But, neither here nor there. I was wondering why Natalya got 30. I was like, what did she do to get 30? Like, why? And I found out that, I guess, her and Tamina had a match somewhere on some show for the 30 spot. And then I thought to myself, okay, well, what did those two women do to get that opportunity? Because, like, I realize that they're veterans. I realize that, you know, they have their last names, you know, Neidhart and Snuka, and there's that. And maybe it's one of their last Royal Rumbles ever. And maybe WWE kind of felt like it was a good way to, hey, we know you may not have many Rumbles left, like, here's a 30 spot. But I just was like, why Natalya at 30? Instead of just, oh yeah, Natalya's going to be in this Rumble. You know.
What's your favorite Tamina match?
I don't have a favorite Tamina match. I have a favorite Tamina moment.
What's your favorite Tamina moment?
She went on Tough Enough and she gave each contestant a splash. And she got super blown up. And I think she only had to give like 5 splashes.
That's awesome. Yeah, that kind of encapsulates the whole problem right there.
And then I thought there were too many spots on the outside. The caveat of the Royal Rumble match is that to be eliminated, you go over the top rope and both feet hit the floor. So you can go through the middle and you can go under the bottom, right?
Right.
Shit, you can even go over the top as long as only one foot hits and that other foot doesn't, right? But that being said, it was confusing for me to watch with all the spots they did on the outside of the ring to be like, all right, well, who's still in this? Who's still legal? Like, what is going on? In my opinion, it's fine to do a few of those, maybe 1 or 2, but just felt like there were like 3, 4, too many, where it kind of took away, like, that's supposed to be a special part of the match, you know? Did he get eliminated? Did she get eliminated? No, right? They're still in it. And we've seen it done before. They do it well. I just felt like it was overdone, and it took away from the mystery. Like, it wasn't as special. Like, next thing you know, all these women are outside the ring, hitting each other, kicking each other, tossing each other around, and I'm like, damn, like, talk about overkill.
I agree with you. I think, like, the rules of the Royal Rumble, like, what the Royal Rumble is supposed to be is, like, a battle royal, and, you know, way back in the day, like, a battle royal was, like, if you got thrown out of the ring, you're out. That's it.
Yep,
you know,
simple and plain.
The Royal Rumble, in, like, over the course of so many years of doing it, they've kind of invented this stipulation that, like, both feet have to hit the floor, and that's resulted in all sorts of, like, wackiness.
Yeah.
Like, Stone Cold Steve Austin stealing an ambulance and shit like that. You know, later on in the men's Rumble, we saw a lot of goofy stuff with that, where you always seem to have these things where it's like, oh, remember, that person wasn't eliminated, and it does detract a little bit from it. Yeah, a lot of the action didn't take place in the ring, and to me, that was a questionable decision. Like, they brought up a few girls from NXT. Shotzi Blackheart was the first to get eliminated, and she got eliminated pretty quick. Sometimes they'll bring up people from NXT in the Royal Rumble as, like, their way of introducing them. And with Shotzi, I was kind of like, oh, maybe she's going to be called up to the main roster, and then she gets thrown out. So I'm like, oh, okay, clearly not. You know, you don't want to, like, establish somebody as a main roster talent by just making them look like a dork in the Royal Rumble. But when the idea of bringing up girls from NXT to participate in the Rumble comes into play, I do have to question including people like Tamina, and you know what I mean? Because there's just, boy, it wouldn't really take too much time to figure out somebody that might be better, you know what I mean, that could use the rub.
Exactly how I feel about that. This is another thing, topic of debate. They announced 13 participants and kept us in the dark for 17 of them. I want to know what you think of that.
Pretty neutral. I mean, I don't know what Jillian Hall was doing in the match. So, okay, we were talking about there not being a live crowd, right? So close your eyes, John, and picture you have, like, a stadium full of people who paid to see the Royal Rumble, and the clock counts down, and the music hits, and out comes Jillian Hall.
Booze. Lots of booze.
It would have been either booze or
crickets.
like, who the fuck is that? Like, I haven't seen her in 15 years. And she wasn't even, like, a big part of the show 15 years ago. So, like, you wouldn't even get that, like, kind of nostalgia pop where, like, oh, I remember that. You know what I mean? Like, I barely remember Jillian Hall. Or you're right, I think everybody just would have shit on it. And, yeah, again, like, there's 30 spots in the Royal Rumble, and that's a spot that probably a lot of girls in developmental would kill to have. That it, to me, doesn't make sense why one of them couldn't have taken that.
Exactly. All right. Of the 13 they announced, it was Shayna Baszler, Alexa Bliss, Peyton Royce, Bianca Belair, Bayley, Charlotte Flair, Nia Jax, Mandy Rose, Dana Brooke, Tamina, Liv Morgan, Ruby Riott, and Natalya. One of the segments I wanted to call Surprise, Surprise! For the main roster women that were not announced that, were in the match, it was Naomi, Billie Kay, Nikki Cross, Carmella, and Lacey. And for the NXT call-ups, I don't even know if I should say that because they really weren't call-ups, but for the NXT women that were in the Rumble, Rhea Ripley, Shotzi Blackheart, Dakota Kai, Ember Moon, and Toni Storm. So yeah, the legends. I wanted to call this segment, you ever seen How I Met Your Mother?
It's
Sure.
gonna be
Legend. Wait for it. Dairy.
Legendary.
The legends that came back were Tori Wilson, Victoria, Mickie James, Jillian Hall, Alicia Fox, and I don't know where to put this one. I'll put her in the middle somewhere. Santana Garrett, who we have seen on NXT before, but she's not prominently featured, so she's in the in-between.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier the 24/7 segment that they did. And I'll give you my opinion, but I also want to dig a little deeper on yours. You said it was fun, and I agree, because that's what the Rumble is. Okay, the Rumble is a fun event in a nutshell. It's fun because there's that unpredictability. Anything can happen. Obviously, the rules are the rules. You get eliminated over the top rope and your feet at the floor. And back in the day, that's all it used to be. And nowadays, you get that, but you also get like the Kofi Kingston jumping around everywhere, and the John Morrison, and the Naomi, and the under the bottom rope, and out through the middle rope, and here we go, right?
Right.
When they did the 24/7 segment, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, I know R-Truth slid into the ring, all the dudes chased him, Alicia Fox pinned him, she gets eliminated, I think maybe R-Truth got it back from her. He ran by the kickoff panel, and Rosenberg got him.
Rosenberg pinned him.
This is how I feel about it, and maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, and I want to know how you think, how you feel. There's a way to do that and get the Women's Royal Rumble over, and also get the 24/7 championship over, whatever segment that they do. And this was my thought. I would have rather it be done before the match started, or just at the end of the, let's say Bianca Belair wins, they interview her in the back, whatever, transitioning between that match and the next match, have them run out and take nothing away from those women, right? Don't let it be a distraction. That's how I felt. I felt like it was a distraction from the Women's Royal Rumble match. And maybe I'm wrong, but it just pissed me off.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree. I thought it was kind of cool. I thought it was fun. You could definitely tell that the Women's Rumble was put together in a way where they were clearly, the writing staff or the booking, you could tell that it was being taken less seriously than the Men's Rumble. A lot of it was treated as a goofy joke. And I don't know if that's a reflection on the way the company feels about their women's division, or if they just felt we don't have a lot of star power in this match, so we have to kind of do things to make up for that. We have to kind of pull these stunts and have these kind of goofy distractions to keep people invested, because we don't really have a lot of big names in the women's roster right now. But I had no problem with it. I thought it was fun. Alicia Fox is somebody that she hasn't been gone long enough to be a legend, but she's been gone long enough that seeing her back is always a surprise, and she's a welcome presence. And I had no problems with it. I thought it was cool.
Well, when you put it like that, it makes more sense. So I'm glad that you put it like that. I didn't see it like that.
But I also get what you're saying about it. If anything took away from the women or took away from the women's division or the talent they have, I think it would just overall, like I said, that you got the sense that behind the scenes, this was something that was treated a lot less seriously.
Yeah.
And kind of, a lot of it treated as a little bit of a joke. And I even got that sense with the Alexa Bliss elimination, right? Where she had been booked so strong the week before, beating Asuka and, basically having these invincible fiend powers. And so, we're sort of expecting that, and we get this dramatic leg show, and it's this big moment, and she just kind of gets dumped out by Rhea Ripley. I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but it was funny. Like, I thought it was funny. I'm like, I don't know if I'm giving WWE too much credit. Like, were they trying to be funny with that? Because if they were, then it worked. I don't know. I can't quite understand what that was trying to accomplish. Other than just, they had to have Alexa Bliss in the match, and they had to figure out a way to get her out of the match so that the whole Fiend storyline wasn't the focus.
Who knows where they're going with that? I don't know.
Didn't seem to really serve a point, but other than just like, it was just another goofy, kind of distracting thing.
Let's lean into that. Let's lean into the Final Four of the Rumble. I picked my Final Four, and I was 0 for 4.
Really?
Yeah. And who they ended up with, obviously, was Charlotte Flair, Natalya, Bianca Belair, and Rhea Ripley. And, of course, Bianca Belair won. Who I thought was going to be in it was Shayna Baszler, Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross, and Bayley. And none of them were in it. But I think the only one that really sticks out in that list is Alexa Bliss.
Like, so, I don't know quite what to make of the Alexa Bliss elimination. What did you think about that?
If I was booking that match, or, you know, I would have liked to see Alexa Bliss in the conversation at the end of that match. Like, oh, is Alexa Bliss going to win and face Asuka, who she's already beaten?
Right.
So that's what I would have preferred. But did you predict who you thought was going to be in the Final Four?
I kind of expected Charlotte to be in the Final Four. There was a moment where I thought Shayna Baszler would be a good pick to win, and even having like her and Nia in the Final Four so that Shayna eliminates Nia and breaks up the team, and then Shayna can do a singles run. Because I think Shayna has a lot of like potential as a credible like top heel. You know what I mean? I think she's kind of like underused in some ways.
Yeah.
And again, putting her with Nia to me kind of just brings her down. So that was really one possibility that I'd considered. But like, so Alexa's wrapped up in like the Fiend storyline. And if you have Alexa be a big part of the match, now you have the Fiend storyline being a big part of the match. And all the stuff kind of surrounding that, like where, you know, is a girl that has like magic powers where she becomes invincible because she's possessed by the Fiend. I'm not saying I hate that when it's just by itself, but when you throw it into the mix with 29 other women, it's sort of overwhelming. Those storyline elements that are surrounding Alexa Bliss right now, to me, were just very out of place in the Rumble. And, you know, like I said, the elimination, I don't know what purpose that served other than just they wanted to kind of acknowledge that this storyline is going on with Alexa and just get her out of the ring as quickly as they could.
Yeah, a lot of question marks. There was no reference to the Fiend at all throughout the night. And I know that's what they want in the Fiend. They don't want us to know when he's coming.
Right.
But, you know, it was kind of strange, too. Like, you would have thought at some point in the Men's Royal Rumble with Randy Orton, you know, going to the back, maybe a run-in with the Fiend.
Right.
Something. Anyway, I had some predictions for given that they left 17 spots open. I made a list. I checked it twice. For main roster women, I only got one right, and I thought Sonya Deville, like I thought for some reason her music would hit and she'd take off her suit and have her ring gear on, you know?
I would have loved that. I love any spot where they have like somebody on commentary like get up out of the desk and get in the Royal Rumble is awesome. Like Jerry the King Lawler back in the 90s. I think that's great.
Yeah. I thought Paige somehow would make like an incredible comeback because I think they still have her on the SmackDown roster somewhere in the depths of the internet. Becky Lynch, I thought Becky Lynch was coming back and I was wrong. So I don't know what they do with her. Lana I predicted to come back and I struck gold, Pat, you know? She
looked great, and yeah, the way she was booked in that match I really liked it. She's improved a ton in the ring.
Yeah. I thought Ronda Rousey would come back. There was rumors circulating. You could gamble. You could go on the internet and put money that Ronda Rousey was going to win the Rumble. So when I saw all that stuff, and the reports were coming back, no, she's not, but that's what they want you to think.
That's what they did a few years ago.
With Edge.
She was on her social media saying that she was in South America filming a movie or something, like the day before the Rumble, as like a misdirect.
Oh.
Yeah, remember that?
No.
It was like the day before the Rumble where she debuted, and she had Instagram posts where she like put the location as like, I don't know if it was like Venezuela or someplace, and you know, it's just something to basically throw people off the scent. So yeah, like, you know, it worked to a lot of degree.
I thought she was coming back, she didn't. And then we hadn't seen this person in a while, Chelsea Green. I know she had an injury. I thought enough time had passed for her to heal, and I thought, you know, maybe they'll throw Chelsea Green into this, and I was wrong. So of that group of ladies, I got Lana. Okay. Now here comes the good part. Okay. So I wanted to call this segment. You ever seen How I Met Your Mother?
It's
Sure.
gonna be
Legend.
Wait
for it. Dairy.
Legendary.
For the legends, I struck out swinging. I didn't get one. I will say this before I bury myself. I wanted to predict Victoria coming back, but I didn't. Something in me was like, no, she's too old. Or for whatever reason, I kept her off my list. And when it happened, I was kicking myself because I almost wrote her down as a prediction. So this is my prediction. It's not very good because I didn't get a single one. Sable.
Sable. Oh no, come on, dude. Sable's not coming back. Like, Sable's married to Brock Lesnar. She's not coming back.
Melina.
Melina, I could see coming back. I mean, I don't know what she's doing, but like...
Maurice.
Maurice would be cool. I'd like to see that.
Ava Marie.
Yeah, there's no reason she couldn't come back if she wanted to.
Layla, who used to run around with Michelle McCool. Layla.
Yeah.
Caitlyn. She was recently in the women's
Mae Young
Classic. Yeah, so that's why I put her on my list.
It's surprising they wouldn't use her.
Threw Kairi Sane on there. Thought, there'd be like a nice little one and done.
Yeah.
And then AJ Lee.
Again, no way, man.
No?
Just because of who she's married to. Same thing.
All
Same
right.
reason.
All right. You got any predictions you wanted to drop in?
I have to think about that.
Well, now you can't. Predictions are before the match starts.
There was one that I thought Beth Phoenix was going to show up.
Oh, for sure.
I thought Beth Phoenix was going to make an appearance.
And she didn't.
Yeah, so no Beth Phoenix. I was surprised by that. I don't know. They kind of box themselves in a corner. It's sort of like become a thing where like every year they have to bring back like quote-unquote legends and stuff like that. And people just expect it. But there's not that many legendary woman wrestlers. Yeah, it's slim pickings. Jillian Hall is your like surprise comeback. I don't know, man.
Yeah, right. I had a lot of trouble putting that list together, I'll tell you that much.
Right, and Mickie James, she's kind of in the Alicia Fox category where I'm like, oh, she's back, oh my god, oh wait,
Yeah.
I didn't know she was gone.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's
Right.
just, she hasn't been gone that long.
Right. Okay.
It was Owens and
Reigns.
Roman Reigns.
So we're going to talk about the Universal Championship match between Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns and a last man standing match. Okay?
Yes.
Predictions for that match? I saw Reigns going over. What about you?
Yeah, same.
Okay.
Same. Like, it didn't seem right to put Kevin Owens over in that situation.
Reigns is one of the hottest dudes right now on the roster.
He's so hot.
Yeah.
SmackDown, obviously. He'll say to Adam Pearce, this is my show. And
Right.
you and I can be like, well, no, it's not. It's everyone's show. But it pretty much is Roman Reigns' show at this point.
Roman Reigns' character is one of the best characters they've had on their show in a very long time. It's right up there with like when Daniel Bryan was the environmental champion.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that level of field work is awesome. Like, Roman Reigns to me is basically when he goes on TV, the character he's portraying right now with Paul Heyman is like everybody's abusive stepdad, awesome at it. He's just like the abusive stepdad who gets angry and wants you to respect him and is completely just unpredictably pissed off all the time. So I think he's doing a great job. And yeah, like, you don't want to kill that guy off. You want to keep him hot.
So hot right now.
So I had some notes from the match. I'm sure you had your opinion on the match. No Jey Uso involvement, and I did some research, between now and the Royal Rumble to see just what it was that kept him not only not being featured in that match, but also he was announced for the Royal Rumble, and then he was a late scratch. So that threw me a curveball. Yeah, they said for the participants, Jey Uso is going to be in this Royal Rumble, and the match goes on, and the number 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the music hits, and no Jey Uso. So I found out he wasn't medically cleared to compete.
There was probably a lot of that. Like, we have to give them a little bit of credit because a lot of those weird decisions, like, oh, why was this person in the match? Why was this person not in the match? Like, we don't know with Corona going on, like, who has travel restrictions, who might be quarantined, who might be sick. It's like, I have to assume there probably were a lot of last-minute replacements and a lot of last-minute changes to this. And, I'm sure in a perfect world they could get everybody that they wanted, but that's a good example of, like, they just couldn't make it work.
His case was a little different. It was an undisclosed injury, but we will talk about the way that the coronavirus and COVID-19 affected the Rumble. All right. Okay, this is what pissed me off. In the beginning of the match, when Reigns was walking out, Michael Cole said, last man standing match, there's no championship advantage. And so you're probably thinking to yourself, why are you mad, Johnny? Like, why are you pissed off? All right, I'll tell you, okay? You're right, Michael Cole. You don't get your normal championship advantage in a one-on-one match. However, to say that there's no championship advantage, and to be Michael Cole saying that, that's like a slap in the face to me. Because there is a championship advantage of being Roman Reigns walking in to put your title on the line against Kevin Owens in a last man standing match. If both guys can't respond to a 10 count, guess who walks away with that same championship? They're not going to strip him. That's an advantage.
That's 100% correct. I didn't even consider that. That actually would have been an interesting finish.
Yeah, when he said that, I was going nuts. Alright, so there was a spot in the match when they went outside the ring and out, into the Thunderdome and did the spot where like they go up to the top where the screens are.
Yep.
They've done that so many times on SmackDown and at other pay-per-views that like when they went and did that in the middle of the match, I was like, oh, we're doing this again? In the same spot? I feel like if you just went to the opposite side of the virtual crowd, and done that, I'd have been fine with it. But they went to the same spot that they've done all those different spots in.
Yeah. Like last time Kevin Owens took a bump like that, it was higher up. So it seemed like less of a big deal.
I think he like broke his ribs or something last time. Anyway.
Yeah, it was like a huge bump. This was kind of like, it was still a huge bump, but it just, we've seen a bigger one recently.
I know that when they were on SmackDown before the Rumble, like Sonya Deville was running the show because Pierce wasn't around. But like, I would have liked to have Pierce involved somehow in this match when like Paul Heyman came out. Then all of a sudden Adam Pierce comes out and the two of them go brawling off. You know what I mean?
That's actually a great point. Adam Pierce was such a big part of like the build-up to it.
Exactly.
And he's been getting punked out by Roman and Paul for, weeks now, or it seems like months. I think it would have been cool. Like, I'd love to see that character get some revenge.
Yeah, and I think it would have been a good opportunity when Paul Heyman came out to give Roman help when he was cuffed, to have Adam Pierce, like, beat the shit out of Heyman or something. I don't know.
Yeah, just you saying that makes me want to see it now, because you're right. He, like, did the surprise reveal that Kevin Owens was going to be the opponent, but it's like, no, I want to see him punch somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's been punked out so much that, like, he needs to kind of get some of that authority back. WWE, in the storylines where they have, like, an authority figure involved, like this one, they can be so inconsistent. You know what I mean? Like, Roman Reigns is not afraid of Adam Pierce at all, right? He has, like, no fear of Adam Pierce. He assaulted a referee. He has, like, no fear of punishment from the company. He's not afraid of being suspended. He's not afraid of being fired. But we've seen storylines over the years where, like, wrestlers will do the same things. They'll get in trouble of some kind, where Roman Reigns just seems to be, like, nobody's really holding him to account. So WWE seems just so inconsistent with that, and I'd love to see that kind of cleaned up a little bit. But That's just my one complaint.
For sure. The last critique I had of that match was that every false count to 10, they got up at 9. Did you notice that? So I would have liked it, like in the beginning parts of the match, where Owens or Reigns would get up at like 6 or 7. And then as the match proceeded, now you got 7 or 8, and then 9. Like, it was so predictable, like the ref's counting, and I think me and you are counting ourselves, in our homes. Like, as it gets closer to 10, like, 7, 8, and then they're up at 9, it's like, 9, and it happened again, they're up at 9, and then it happened again, they're up at 9, and then throughout the rest of the match, I'm like, watch, he's going to get up at 9, watch, he'll get up at 9.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't know what that was about. You're right, the psychology of it, like, as you're taking more damage, it should be harder and harder for you to get up. And every last man standing match that I can remember, they've actually had that be part of the story for the match. And maybe they were tired, and, when you're lying down, maybe you just want to, like, get those few extra seconds.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
It would have probably made for a more interesting story if, it always getting harder and harder for this person to get to his feet, so now there's more drama involved. So I agree with you, that's a good point. Like, the screw up with the handcuffs, and I almost hate to talk about it because it was such a good match, they worked so hard that it's a shame that happened, because that's, like, I feel like the number one thing that people are going to remember from it, which it shouldn't be the case. They had a great match and they beat the shit out of each other, but pretty much all anybody was talking about that night was like, oh, they screwed up with the handcuffs. But it's like, that's an example of, like, you can tell that was not meant to be part of the story.
I'll be honest, I didn't notice the handcuff spot that got screwed up. I didn't notice it too much, yeah. I don't know if I wasn't paying close enough attention, but I was just so caught off guard with everything going on in the match that I didn't pay super close attention to the handcuff spot getting screwed up. So
can I say something about, as you mentioned, I'm a police officer, and I put handcuffs on people every single day of my life.
Absolutely.
I have to say about handcuffs that they oftentimes can have a mind of their own. They can be very hard to unlock. And there's been plenty of occasions where I've tried to unlock handcuffs and it's taken much longer than a 10 count. So I would probably advise WWE that if they're ever going to do a handcuff spot ever again, maybe go to, like, Party City and get, like, the kids' toy handcuffs and do it that way, because it really did, unfortunately, take away from the match a lot more than it should have.
How about they do it in a no DQ match that's not a last man standing match with no count of 10, or instead of using handcuffs, like rope?
Yeah. Here's the funny thing about that, is it's happened before. There's like a bunch of examples of like them using handcuffs and not being able to get them off. Like it's happened like 10 times.
Why don't you learn from your mistakes?
It's not like it's never happened before.
And consistently screwing up the same stuff without learning from our mistakes. Alright, we're going to move on to the men's Royal Rumble match. They announced 21 out of the 30 entrants, okay? Besides the Jey Uso late scratch that was due to an undisclosed injury and he wasn't medically cleared to compete, as far as who they had announced, Randy Orton and Edge were announced that they were going to start 1 and 2. I thought that was pretty cool. AJ Styles, Big E, Daniel Bryan, Sheamus, Jeff Hardy, Bobby Lashley, Matt Riddle, Cesaro, Miz and Morrison, Otis, Sami Zayn, Shinsuke Nakamura, Dolph Ziggler, Mustafa Ali, Xavier Woods, Braun Strowman, Elias, Ricochet, Baron Corbin, and the two Mysterios, Rey and his son Dominic. We saw Hurricane Shane Helms. We saw Carlito, and we saw Damian Priest, who was an NXT call-up. And as far as, you know, anyone that made a surprise entrant, we got Seth Rollins. The legends that came back were Christian and Kane. But I wanted to know, overall, what you thought of this men's Royal Rumble match.
I went into it with pretty low expectations, I'll be honest with you. Looking at the list of the people that they had announced, okay, there were a few younger up-and-coming guys on the list. The best Royal Rumble matches they've ever done, or the most memorable ones they've ever done, are where they've used it to create a star, where you have somebody who's on the rise, who's up-and-coming, who really isn't quite in the title picture yet. He's not quite a main eventer, but he wins the Royal Rumble and he gets made like Drew McIntyre last year, or Stone Cold Steve Austin in 1998. It's the best use of the Royal Rumble. Like, the Royal Rumble is such a great way of elevating somebody to that next level. And when I was looking at the list of 21 people, yeah, there were some guys, like maybe Big E or Mustafa Ali, that, you know, they're kind of mid-card. They really haven't been in the title picture. But for the most part, almost everybody on the list, I was looking at it just thinking to myself, you know, I feel like been there, done that. Like, you know, no disrespect to Jeff Hardy, but I don't want to see Jeff Hardy compete for the championship ever again. You know what I mean? I'd be fine if I never saw another match like that. Guys like Sheamus, Randy Orton, I mean, these are guys that they've been on the show for a long time. They're not necessarily young. You know, they can still go, but it's just like, it doesn't matter how old you are in terms of your actual age, but I felt like a lot of the names that were on that list were very old in terms of just being part of the show for so long that it's like we've just been there, done that. You know what I mean? I've seen all these people main event shows. Most of these people have held world titles before, and of the people that hadn't, like, nothing really excited me about seeing the possibility of them winning. You know what I mean? Like, the only name that I thought would have been in a good position like that would be Big E. Like, I'd love to see Big E in the main event. I think he's ready for it. You know, he could be a huge, huge star. I mean, he is a big star, but I think he's ready for the next level, and I'd like to see him in the next level. But, yeah, and of course the opposite happened, where the winner, you know, not only was it some young up-and-coming guy, but it was, you know, basically a retired guy.
I thought it was a good match, but, like, you know, as far as the entrants go, right, that's what drew a lot of my questions. I would love to be a fly on the wall during those decisions. Right? To be like, okay, who do we got? This is who we got. Okay, who's in the match? This is who's in the match. This is who's not in the match. And this is why? Okay, who are we going to bring back to fill those spots? This is who we're going to bring back, and this is why. And this is who we're not going to bring back, this is why. I'd love to just be there to hear how that process goes.
Right.
I wrote some notes down. Obviously, we kind of mentioned it earlier. No Fiend spot. Nothing for the Fiend. I would have liked that. Definitely would have liked that. Because there's a lot going on in a men's Royal Rumble match, and there's a lot of chaos in that match, and what a perfect environment for the Fiend to cause more chaos. I had chosen Brock Lesnar to win the men's Royal Rumble. I was wrong. When Braun Strowman, like, came out of obscurity on SmackDown and just decimated everyone, they certainly made him seem like he was one of the favorites to win it all.
Right.
And my opinion was this: he looked weak.
Well, why do you say that?
He was like selling, or maybe even overselling, these moves by these smaller dudes. Where, like, the selling he was doing, I felt was more suitable towards someone his own size. I forget who it was. Someone, like, ran into the corner, gave him a drop kick, and he sold like a son of a gun. And I'm like, that person should be bouncing off Strowman, and he should be like, no selling it, no sell. Like, he didn't even feel it, like a mosquito bite, you know?
How did Braun get eliminated?
Edge got him.
Edge got him? Because he he has that Andre the Giant thing. Like, Andre the Giant, he would never lose, like, a battle royal. Like, if Andre the Giant was in it, he's going to eliminate everybody. And he just has that size that, like, you would think he's favored to win. So the only really way to have him be in that match and make it work, other than him beating everybody, is if everybody gangs up on him and eliminates him. I don't remember that happening. It might have happened in years past, but when a guy like Braun Strowman gets in the ring, that's when everybody should stop what they're doing, look at that guy and be like, we need to, like, work together and get this motherfucker out of the equation right now, because that's the only chance any of us are going to have. Yeah, I do agree with you. You know, it's the same thing with, like, the ladder matches sometimes, where, like, everybody has to get their spots in. You know, those Money in the Bank matches where they have a whole bunch of participants and some guy comes into the ring and it's like, has that dude been selling for 10 minutes? Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that Braun was a victim of that. You know what I mean? Like, just that you have to, like, lie there and sell so that something else can happen.
I think so too. That's probably why I felt like he was made to look weak in that Rumble. It certainly did what they kind of did with Alexa Bliss and Asuka and just, like, completely disregarded that, where they built him up on SmackDown to be a threat. He gets that 30 spot, and then it just didn't pan out the way I thought it would. I guess I had high standards for how they were going to use Strowman in that 30 spot, and they fell short, man. That's just my opinion. So,
Do you think it would have been a good move for Braun to win?
No, but just be the monster that he is. You know? Put up a fight. I feel like he got eliminated just like anybody would get eliminated. And he's not supposed to be booked as just anybody.
No.
He's huge.
I agree completely. I think, like, WWE has this history of, like, hiring, like, huge, like, massive guys. Like, when the Big Show was first signed, it was like a 10-year contract. Like, they had high hopes for this dude, and they kept him around, and they kept trying different things to try to get him over. And I think, like, Vince McMahon or whoever is making these decisions, they like the idea of having, like, this huge, unbeatable monster working for them, but they don't seem to be very good at figuring out how to use them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, they like the idea of Braun Strowman. They like having him working for them, but they just don't know how to really make money with the guy that well, it seems.
Look who we have on our roster. Look at the size of this guy.
Just looking at a guy, and if you're WWE, you look at Braun Strowman, and you think, oh, this guy needs to work for us. And then when he's working for you, it's like you weren't really thinking how you were going to make this work. You just like the idea of hiring a huge guy, and, you know, but there's a way that you need to really be careful about how you book him. And I don't think they've been careful enough.
Everything they failed to do with the elimination of Braun Strowman in that match, they did correctly with my man, Bobby Lashley. That's my guy, all right?
Yes.
You know it took 4 men to eliminate him. 4. Not 1, not 2, not 3. 4 men.
Like, look at Bobby Lashley. Like, it should take 4 men to eliminate him.
So I was pretty pumped with how that turned out. I mean, he's already the United States champion. I wanted him in the end, you know, in the mix for that conversation of, like, is he going to win? And, you know what I mean? Like, go to Mania to maybe become a double champion or whatever.
I think that would have been a good choice, too.
I wanted him in there in, like, the final 4 of the last 3, but it didn't happen that way. Like, when I looked at it, like, it took 4 men to eliminate him, and he's still the United States champion. So at the end of the day, whatever. You know, he didn't win the match, so no skin off my back. So that's what I had for notes on that. I definitely want to share with you my list of predictions because it's pretty funny.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Surprise, surprise! For the surprise entrance of the male variety for the main roster. I pretty much took everyone and just put them on the list. So, you know, Jimmy Uso. I put Jimmy on there. I'm like, okay, he's been out for a while. This would be a really good place to, you know, bring him back, the Royal Rumble. And I was wrong.
Yeah.
Seth Rollins, I put on the list. I was right. Like you said earlier, I pop just like you do when someone gets up from the announce desk. So I put Samoa Joe.
I was expecting that too.
I would have died. Dun, 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 dun. I would have gone nuts.
That would have been dope.
And he takes off his suit and he's got his gear on. It would have been cool. Andrade we haven't seen in a while. I thought it'd be a good time to bring him back. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything except Seth Rollins, so I'll just get these out. Jason Jordan. For some reason I was like, okay, maybe he's healed up from his injury and we can see Jason Jordan again.
That would have been a good time for him to come back and I think, you know, repackage the guy a little bit too, like introduce him with a different look or something that kind of like freshens him up a little bit. He's awesome, but again, they don't really seem to know how to make money with him.
Not to take anything away from any of those guys, but a Royal Rumble match is not a difficult match to get through when in comparison to other types of matches, right?
Sure, I suppose, you know, the length of it, yeah. There were some really big bumps in this match too.
Right, yeah, Christian. I remember Christian got beat the shit out.
Yeah.
But for Jason Jordan to come back in a match like that, I feel like he could have gotten through it scotch-free.
Yeah.
But I don't know enough about the extent of his injury. That's why I put him on the list. Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal was used recently at Superstar Spectacle, I believe, in India. That's why I put him on my list for like, okay, so they're going to use him for this. Why not use him for the Rumble? It didn't happen. Kofi Kingston, I put on the list. You can't have a Royal Rumble match without Kofi Kingston. Somehow they did it anyway. I think he has a broken jaw.
Yeah, they let us know beforehand too, and I was kind of like, oh, this is cool, like maybe he's gonna come back.
Yeah.
And where he's like, no, I'm not doing it this year.
I thought they were trying to pull the wool over our eyes.
Yeah, especially having him in his gear. It's like, well, I'm of the opinion that you should not be wearing wrestling gear unless you expect to wrestle.
Yep.
People should not be just like backstage wearing wrestling gear if they're not wrestling.
Yes.
Like, that's my opinion, but you know, whatever, what do I know? This that had Kane go to the premiere of See No Evil wearing his wrestling gear with like elbow pads and stuff, so I don't know.
That'd be weird. Before he got shit canned, I put Lars Sullivan on this list.
That didn't turn out well.
Brock Lesnar, obviously, I put him on the list. I even picked him to win. Just based off like last year's performance, based off of him being gone for so long since dropping the belt to McIntyre at Mania. That level of unpredictability, I put him on the list. I know why they didn't use him, but we both know it's because of not having that live crowd. You don't put Brock Lesnar on something without a live crowd.
That would have been cool, and it probably would have been wasted without the live crowd. Yeah, you need that like oh shit reaction.
Exactly. Aleister Black was on my list. It seems like they've been penalizing him for the actions of his wife Zelina Vega and the Twitch nonsense. You're familiar with that?
Yeah, a little bit. He was a guy that I think they had high hopes for, and it just hasn't
materialized.
They don't know what to do with him.
Yeah. Murphy. I put Murphy on the list.
Oh, good choice.
I put Kalisto. I put Bo Dallas and Mojo Rawley, and we didn't get any of them.
Bo Dallas and Mojo Rawley. Oh God.
Yeah.
Talk about guys they don't know what to do with.
It's gonna be
Legend. Wait for it. Derry.
Legendary.
This was the best list I did on, right? Because I know I haven't done so well up to this point, but this was the best one I did. Booker T was on my list.
I was shocked. He was on the show.
He
Like,
looked
jacked. He looked like he was in shape. I'm like,
oh man.
yeah, he's gotta come back.
Unbelievable. Triple H. They used him on Raw.
They did.
Shane O'Mac. The Rock. The Rock to win, and then feud with Reigns.
Was there a rumor that The Rock might be coming back? Because you brought it up earlier. Like,
WrestleMania.
Did people expect The Rock to make an appearance?
The rumor is Reigns is going to face him at Mania.
Really?
Yeah, but I don't know how true that is, you know?
He's a big name, you know? I think he's got like the most Instagram followers of anybody in the world or something like that.
Jeez Louise. I didn't know that.
I'd love to see Rock come back to wrestling, but it's like, at this point, the dude should be thinking about running for president of the United States. You know what I mean? Like, he's kind of left wrestling way behind at this point.
Yeah. Christian I called Christian.
That was cool. That was awesome.
Made perfect sense with the storyline. They had him come back during when they were filming with no crowd, no Thunderdome. So he was there and Orton like kicked him in the head. Edge gets hurt, heals up his tricep. I thought it'd be perfect to bring Christian back in the Rumble. Kane.
Yep.
Kane. You can't have a Rumble without Kane. Okay?
The mayor of Knox County.
Knox County in Tennessee. Yeah, it must be so surreal for those people.
Dude, I don't know how you even fucking process it. Like, if I saw Marty Walsh enter the Royal Rumble, I don't know what I'd do.
I'd poop my pants. So, you get Kane in there, and that was good. He wasn't in very long, but...
Now that I say that, I do want the Boston Mayor Marty Walsh to enter the Royal Rumble.
Hey, let it be known. Here on the Super Sports Bros podcast, we're calling you out, Marty Walsh. He's on a list of most eliminations, I believe, for the Royal Rumble match. So cool to have him in there.
Every year, he's never won one, but he's kind of that like big man role where like he's
put over the other big men.
He eliminates people. He should be unbeatable in that situation, but oftentimes he gets beaten.
He's the devil's favorite demon. John Cena. You hear reports, you say, okay, Cena's not going to be involved for WrestleMania 37, but I think the skeptic in me is like, well, that's what they want you to think. And then when he shows up, it's like, oh, what's he doing here? So I'm like, okay, maybe Cena comes into the Rumble, but why blow your load on John Cena with no live crowd?
It's just they would have been blowing too big of a load. Yeah. When you think about John Cena and, bringing back Seth Rollins, Christian, I mean, that's a pretty big load to blow.
Yeah. Batista was on my list. I know he recently got into pretty good shape, so I'm like, okay, maybe he's gearing up for a comeback. And last but not least, Tyson Kidd. The reason Tyson Kidd's on that list is because I saw some footage leak of him training somebody. I forget who it was. And I was like, well, if he's training somebody, maybe, just maybe, they put him in a Rumble.
And you know what? I'm going to stop you there talking about Tyson Kidd, because think about this, right? Let's wind the clock back a few years. And I think they talked about this on the Observer Radio. But, there were several people in this Royal Rumble match that a couple of years ago were told, you will never wrestle again. And basically,
yes,
they told the audience, like, you'll never come back. They're too hurt. It's too dangerous for them to ever wrestle again. Christian, Daniel Bryan, Edge, like, there might have been somebody else in the match, I'm not mistaken, but, like, we've seen this kind of recurring thing where, like, you hear of somebody being told, like, they're never going to wrestle again, and then eventually down the road they get cleared. You know what I mean? When Edge retired, it was, like, this big moment, and, you know, everybody just genuinely believed, like, this guy's career was over. I remember Daniel Bryan's retirement speech, and it's like, now he's just another guy taking bumps in the Royal Rumble. Christian, I think it wasn't even that long ago, he was on TV, but he didn't do any wrestling at all. Yeah. And I think that was just because of the condition he was in. But at some point, they decided it's okay for you guys to wrestle, you know? So it's like, you have to never say never when it comes to things like that. So Tyson Kidd really isn't that
far-fetched.
It's not impossible.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that. In the final four of the men's Rumble, and this was my list. I thought this was going to be the final four. I got 2 out of the 4. I picked Shinsuke Nakamura, I picked Strowman, I picked Jey Uso before I found out he was not on it, you know what I mean? And Edge. And the reason I picked Nakamura was because of the way they put him over in that gauntlet match. Strowman, because of the way he came back from being suspended. Jey Uso, because I figured, like, given the storyline, he would be there to protect his cousin's championship. Or even, if you have Jey Uso in the Final Four, there's that thought, like, could he win this and then take that opportunity and cash in on McIntyre? Or even his own cousin and hold that over his head?
That may very well have been what they wanted to do. Like, I don't want to beat them up too badly over this, but, like, to me, the best storyline that the company has going right now is the Roman Reigns, Jey Uso storyline. That's, like, good TV. That's, like, the best TV they've come up with. I'm so invested in it. It's so emotional. It's so real. And I think that it didn't get worked into the Royal Rumble was kind of a missed opportunity, so I agree with you on that.
Definitely. It's a storyline that hits close to home, and a lot of people can relate to it, you know. But I do want to read who was actually in the Final Four. It was Edge, Orton, Seth Rollins. It looks like it was Christian.
They kind of teased us a bit where we thought it was the Final Four, but then they had the, remember Randy.
Oh,
Randy
the Orton, okay. So let's put Strowman into that mix. Strowman, Christian, Seth Rollins, and Edge. And then, of course, we thought Edge was going to win, and then Orton slid in, who hadn't been eliminated yet. Because when something like that happens in the Rumble, that night I was watching with a casual fan, I had to explain to him that because the referees didn't make a decision to disqualify Orton, that he was still in the match. I said, watch this. He's going to walk away. He's going to come back.
What did you think about that? Like, just the way Randy Orton was worked into the storyline. Like, I don't know. Did you hate it? Did you like it? How'd you feel about it?
I'm a big Randy Orton fan. I liked it. I just think that they milked it too long. Like, it seemed like it took them forever to get him to go to the back.
We've all watched WWE enough that, like, you know what I mean? You can always tell on WWE when something is meant to be part of it and when something has genuinely happened that they didn't plan for. And, you know, it's like, if you're going to do something where you're trying to swerve the audience, you have to be a little more subtle than they were. I think that it might have been like a little bit of reverse psychology being used, because I think that, okay, they're making it obvious that, like, Randy hasn't been eliminated, so obviously as fans, we know that what that means. We know that he's going to come back at the end of the match and probably win. So the fact that he didn't win the match, I imagine, was kind of where the swerve was. You know, we all knew he was going to come back, and we were sort of meant to know he was going to come back, but we didn't quite expect the finish to go the way it was. If that was their intention, then I think it was effective.
For sure. Edge was the 5th man in history to win from the number 1 spot, and it was the first time they've done that in 15 years. Pretty crazy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. All right. The next segment I just wanted to, bring up is something I like to call sleepers. I have a list of sleepers that I think the creative is sleeping on, or fans might be sleeping on some of these people based off the way they've been booked. The number 1 guy on the list is right up your alley. Big E. Big E's on my sleeper list. I put people on my sleeper list because I don't want anyone who's listening to this podcast to sleep on these people. And if you have been, it's time to wake up, right? Big E. Big E is not someone that you should sleep on. Pat, you agree?
If you're sleeping on Big E, I don't know what you're thinking, man. Come on. He's been such a star for, like, years now. Like, pay attention.
Okay.
The dude has it.
Yeah, he does. Cesaro. Cesaro's on the list, okay?
Yep.
What I will say about Cesaro is he may not be the most charismatic dude on the roster when it comes to the wrestling of the match. But when it comes to, like, the technical wrestling, okay? This guy, he can work with anyone. He delivers every single time. He hits hard. He's one of the strongest pound-for-pound dudes they got. I know they just re-signed him. Kudos to the decision makers for bringing that guy back, because if you had let him go, he would have been a star somewhere else.
Yes.
So I put him on my sleeper list. If you're sleeping on Cesaro, stop it, okay? Wake up. You agree with that?
I do agree with that. Cesaro was a guy that I remember back in the days of Ring of Honor and, just following the indie scene when he was up and coming. This was before, Bryan Danielson got signed. He was a guy that a lot of people considered to be one of the best wrestlers in North America. He had some of the best matches on the indies. He had some of the best Ring of Honor matches during that era. And, honestly, his best work was on the indies. He hasn't really been able to have, a really, truly great match. If you were to take, Cesaro's, top 100 best matches, none of them have been with WWE. Even though he's been there for a long time, all they seem to know how to do with him is just make him, random, tag team guy. And he has not been able to show what he can do. He's very, very, very underrated and very underutilized.
Gotcha, bro. On my list of sleepers, Elias. I got Elias on my sleeper list. I really think he could win the Intercontinental Championship and have a great Intercontinental Championship run and put that title back in relevancy. Not to take anything away from, anyone who's had the title. I know Big E has it right now. Maybe even United States Championship. I think he's not necessarily, the main event type caliber guy right now. But you could put a mid-card championship on Elias and have him, just go on this run, this singles run. He's on my sleeper list. You think people are sleeping on Elias?
He's another guy that I liked his NXT gimmick more. I think, when he came to the main roster, they didn't really know what to do with him outside of just having to be an annoying guy with a guitar. But the dude is an incredible physical presence. He's a great talker. He has a really unique charisma. And, I sort of wonder, what kind of range he has as far as portraying maybe a slightly different character than he's been given. But I do agree. I think Elias is very much underutilized and has a ton of potential.
Okay. I got two more. They're women. I think people are sleeping on Naomi. I also think people are sleeping on Nikki Cross. Naomi is one of the most athletic people on the entire roster. I think if she was given the correct platform to display her talents, that people who are sleeping on her would be utterly surprised. Nikki Cross, I liked her gimmick, like you said with Elias. I like Nikki Cross better in NXT. She was just this wild child of sanity. When Nikki Cross gets going and gets a full head of steam under her, she is fun to watch, entertaining as hell. I love seeing her just go nuts. So I put them on my list. What do you think?
Nikki Cross is great. I loved her gimmick in NXT. She was great. She had some great matches and some great moments. And on the main roster, she was Alexa Bliss's ugly friend. You know what I mean? Kind of made a point to point out she's not this beautiful woman that they would expect on the main roster or whatever. But I just want to say for the record, you ever seen on a TV show or a movie where they have a character that's supposed to be the ugly one, but in real life they wouldn't actually be ugly. They're just TV ugly.
Yes.
In real life, Nikki Cross is pretty hot.
Hot as hell.
But what's that?
She's hot as hell.
Yeah, Nikki Cross is fine. But they have her sort of play the kind of outcast girl. And I don't know, I kind of miss that spitfire personality she had in NXT a little bit. But she can go in the ring and she's got a ton of charisma.
What are your thoughts on Naomi?
Naomi has probably been utilized well. I think that, she was women's champion on SmackDown during, it was I believe 2016, which was one of the best runs on SmackDown in recent memory. She had a big title win, she had a good run as champion. She's had a lot of great matches and was a big part of one of the better periods of the women's division a few years back. I feel like she's had a good run, you know what I mean? And I don't know what her goals are personally. She's married. She's, might be thinking about a family, as a lot of people do once they reach a certain point in their careers. So I wouldn't say Naomi's necessarily been underutilized. I think that, she's been showcased very well. I give her all the props in the world. I think she's great. I respect her work ethic, and she's somebody that, she can probably, if she wants to stick with it long term, be in the Natalia role. You can always use her as a credible challenger.
Okay.
But not necessarily make her the focus of the division.
Alright, makes sense. Alright, so that's it for my sleeper list, and what I want to do is, I want to thank you for coming on, Pat Sullivan.
Yeah, man, I'd love to do this again.
It was a pleasure to have you here on the Super Sports Bros podcast to talk. We discussed wrestling and WWE, Raw, and SmackDown. Basically, we did a review of the Royal Rumble pay-per-view in 2021. So what I like to do for my guests, all of my guests, I give you the segment called Last Word. You got any last word for the listeners of the podcast?
I'm glad that we both agree Nikki Cross is hot. And here's something that a lot of people don't understand, right? It's okay to admit and it's okay to talk about the fact that the women on this show are hot. Okay, Carmella is hot, Sasha Banks is hot, Billy is hot. It's okay. It's alright. I know it's 2021 and people don't want to be offended, but it's alright. We can talk about it. We can acknowledge it.
Yeah, man, it was real good to have you on, and we should do this again. You know, if you're down, if you got the time, I feel like we could talk wrestling for many hours. What do you think? You coming back?
I think so. I think it would be a mistake not to.
There we go. All right, from yours truly, John Buddha Phillips, otherwise known as Johnny Pierce. I want to thank Patty O'Galvin, aka Pat Sullivan, for coming on and talking wrestling with me. We will see you next time, so make sure you tune in, check us out on social media, and check our episode out on YouTube. All right, everybody, take care, stay safe, and watch wrestling.
Enjoy wrestling.
Enjoy watching wrestling. The Super Sports Bros Podcast is brought to you by the good people at Undisputed Nutrition and Bliss Body. Bliss Body, a swimwear and fitness boutique unlike any other. Ladies, look and feel your best. Fellas, it's the place to buy her the perfect gift. Hey, they even sent me a free watch. Use promo code BUDDHAP3115 to get 15% off your order. Find them online at blissbodyshop.com or on Facebook and Instagram.